Yeah, I'm very happy to share this panel with Natalie and Leon and Antoine. When I found out we were in the same space, it was, well, as an Israeli, that has obviously personal significance for me, but also it's a beautiful example of this relational medicine, which is the subject that I want to talk about. So, hello, everybody. Hello. My name is Adam. I literally wrote that down in case I forgot. I have a really weird accent. I tend to talk very fast. Okay? If you bear with me for a minute, I'm sure you'll be able to tune in. I'm also happy to have Mark here in the front row. If I forget to breathe, just help me breathe. And my personal yoga teacher also to breathe. As you can see, I'm both very nervous and also anxious. I not always knew the difference between both. Now I know the difference because I can feel it very, very strongly. So nervousness is more like this uncomfortable but pretty manageable butterflies in my stomach. The anxiety is a little bit more overpowering, kind of like this intense pressure on my chest, a knot in my stomach. But I mean, I'm happy to be feeling these things, not now, but in general, like feeling and naming and locating these sensations in my body as they arise, kind of like a big part of my own healing journey. So, and it's part of what I want to talk about. So, yeah, so it's part of my putting my pieces together. So speaking about that, I want to start this talk actually with a short story by an Uruguayan writer. His name is Eduardo Galeano. The original is in Spanish, but I'm just going to read the translation. And he says, why does one write if not to put one's pieces together? From the moment we enter school or church, education chops us into pieces. It teaches us to divorce soul from body and mind from heart. The fishermen of the Colombian coast must be learned doctors of ethics and morality, for they invented the word sentipensante, feeling thinking, to define language that speaks the truth. So this word, sentipensante in Spanish, feeling thinking, this is a term that was gathered from the popular wisdom of traditional fishermen in the Caribbean coast of Colombia. Feeling thinking, very simply, to feel with the heart, to feel with the thinkings. To think with the feelings and to feel with the thinkings. It's a cognitive process that is fully embodied. Yeah. Arturo Escobar is a Colombian anthropologist. He developed this term a little bit further, and he contrasts this modality of feeling thinking with a more dominant modality of abstract thinking that is based on this radical ontological duality between the mind and the body. And he takes that one step further. Okay? Arturo Escobar draws a lot of inspiration in his work from indigenous epistemologies, and very specifically from Amazonian ways of knowing and being. So Escobar observes that for traditional people in the Amazon, they oftentimes go beyond just this embodied feeling thinking, and rather they enact this more connected, territorialized feeling thinking with the earth, sentipensar con la tierra. So Escobar understands this modality of cognition, again, as opposed to this Western abstract thinking, as a thought process that is not only fully embodied in the body, but it's also in constant dialogue with other beings. And it's in constant dialogue with the land. And it's in constant dialogue with the feedback loops that we receive from our environment. And this is a way of being that is always relational. Okay? It's always in relation with. Okay? In relation with our feelings and our sensations, in relation with the land, and also in relation with other people. And Amazonian ontologies, yes, they are much more inclusive in terms of who is considered to be people. Yeah? Many Amazonian traditional societies are still, to some extent, animistic. And my favorite definition of what animism means is by Graham Harvey. And he basically explains it this way. For animistic people, animism is a lived experience where the world is a community of people. And only a few of those people are human people. So there's human people, and there's non-human people, fish people, plant people, tree people, all sorts of different people, river people, rain people. And in these communities, in these societies, there's always a lot of care and attention on living life reciprocally, a lot of care in maintaining these relationships reciprocal and built on this slow mutual care. So yeah, relationships are crafted very slowly. In our Western post-industrial societies, obviously we don't live like that anymore. One of the defining aspects of modernity is what sociologist Zygmunt Bauman calls liquidity. We live liquid lives. Societies that highly prefer what is transitory rather than what is permanent, where the immediate takes precedence over the long term, where the really most important value is what is useful and in the same moment. And radical uncertainty renders this long-term planning pretty much meaningless. So for Bauman, the liquidity of our times that is characterized by this rampant consumerism also means that relationships, whether human-to-human relationships or human-to-world relationships, are in its essence always exploitative. Yeah, they're commodified, and these relationships cannot really fulfill this need that we have for authentic intimacy and connection. The insights that I want to share with you come from my experience in the last couple of years. I have been living and working at the Temple of the Way of Light. It's a healing center near the city of Iquitos in the Peruvian Amazon. The workshops and retreats that we offer there emphasize ayahuasca contextualized within the indigenous Shipibo medical practices as a vehicle for personal and collective healing and transformation. And I work there both as a workshop facilitator and also as a researcher. And one of the main things that I often emphasize in the beginning of a workshop is that the work that we do at the temple in many ways breaks away from the ways that we think of health, mostly in Western societies, where health and healing are mostly a very individual process. And when people choose to come and attend one of those workshops in a group setting, people also make the implicit commitment that they are not there to become passive consumers of whatever pill or treatment is being handed down to them, but actually they're there as participants and co-creators in a healing space that is both deeply personal and individual, but at the same time it's also collective, it is shared. And that collectivity entails a degree of agency, of mutual responsibility that is lacking in many of our Western institutionalized health interventions. There is nearness, there is care, there's like this slowness in human relationships. As an investigator, I am currently conducting qualitative research for a couple of different studies. In the last couple of years, I have had really the immense privilege of interviewing dozens of people who have shared with me their most intimate experiences of struggle and healing. One study we're doing in collaboration with ICEERS and the Beckley Foundation, and another one that is just getting started, a collaboration with Leor and Hans and Imperial College. With ICEERS, we have been carrying out this observational study in the last 3 years, basically examining the therapeutic potential that ayahuasca has or can offer for people that are experiencing anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, and also just as a valuable practice to enhance their well-being. And I'm not really sharing data from these studies. Some of my colleagues actually already presented some of these very promising results during this very conference. So the study with the Imperial team, we're just getting started, and that study was born from some of the very insights that prompted me to give this talk, which are the recurring themes that I've encountered in these many dozens of formal interviews and also hundreds of informal conversations with guests, with other staff members, with friends. And the concept that Leor talked about in the previous presentation was comunitas. Yeah. So many of us, when we think of ayahuasca, particularly if we're drinking for the first time, we don't have much experience, we think of visionary realms and states and journeys into hyperspace and ayahuasca as a doorway for transpersonal or mystical states. Yes, all of these things are wonderful. Ayahuasca provides all of that for some of us, some of the time. And it's wonderful and very powerful, often life-changing experiences. Ayahuasca is clearly also a very important ally in our deeper intrapersonal work, helping us process trauma, better cope with challenging life events. For me, personally, perhaps the thing that has captivated my attention the most is a central space that the relational and the interpersonal occupy in people's narratives. So for a lot of us, a big part of the healing really lies in examining very, very closely, with meticulous, sometimes microscopic attention, the details, the relationships that give meaning to our lives. So how do we conduct ourselves? How are we in relation with our parents, with our kids, with our families, with our friends, with our workshop co-participants? And sometimes can be very specific. Whole ceremonies can orbit around this one random person that we haven't really thought of in 15 years, or about this specific interaction that we had with another person when we were back in high school. And it isn't always immediately evident why revisiting these episodes can have a significant or important, but upon honest reflection, we can learn a lot about how we relate to and engage with each other through all of these instances, and that is relational medicine. And it isn't surprising that in indigenous communities, the main roles that ayahuasca plays are mainly relational. Ayahuasca is central in many cultures as a medium towards social cohesion, keeping community relationships in check, balanced, making sure that interactions are harmonious. And Amazonian notions of community, again, they're much broader. So this is true for human relationships, but it's also true for other than human relationships. In a workshop, it is very easy to see the central importance that the group has, the deeply healing aspects of doing this work together. Together with other people who are committed to be authentic and vulnerable, people who choose to create and maintain a social container that is based on that mutual responsibility. And it's also easy to see, for example, the importance that the love and the care that the healers themselves bring to the situation, like the perceived outcome, is not just the substance that they provide or the diffuse spiritual intervention that they channel, but there's a lot of human love and compassion. There's a massive, really big human element that goes into it. It's people genuinely taking care of each other. And although transient, these are very powerful experiences of community that many of in our daily lives. So these are experiences that reminds us that healthy, nurturing relationships are not a luxury, but really some of the most basic of human needs. And self-care is important, but it can only go so far. What we're really thirsty for in this liquid modernity is community care, connection, taking care of each other. Feminist writer Gloria Steinem, she writes, "We teach what we need to learn, we write what we need to know." The same is true for our focus on research, the methodologies we choose to use. For me, ethnography, a vehicle for self-knowledge, an interview, an opportunity to connect intimately with somebody else, something that is not very easy for me to do in real life. My work as a workshop facilitator, obviously, for me, a part of my own quest for peace of mind, and at least a deeper insight into my own health. I have been struggling with anxiety quite a lot. I believe that a lot of this anxiety is like neurotic anxiety, because this inability to remain in the present moment and slow down. There are other aspects to this anxiety that are markedly relational. They are political, they're contextual. And it is important to politicize our suffering, to shed light into shadowy corners of structural violence that is also shared. I am anxious about catastrophic climate chaos, and I'm anxious about the collapse of civilized society, and I'm anxious about economic insecurity and social instability. I'm anxious about the unknown and frightening future that we're crafting for ourselves and our children. I'm anxious about losing my optimism for a better future for all of us. And that anxiety is not only mine. I'm anxious. Everybody in this room, or most people in this room, will be having some similar experiences. We all share the same planet. We all suffer in different ways, to different extents, from the structural violence that sustains late capitalism. And we all suffer from climate-related grief, as the consequences of the Anthropocene get closer and closer and closer, even to the most privileged pockets of the affluent West. My anxieties make sense to me. It feels to me like a natural reaction to our collective predicament. So right now, this anxiety is my best teacher. Again, this is why I mentioned in the beginning. I'm happy to be feeling all of this to some extent. Instead of suppressing it, the anxiety, as I would do in the past, with the help of ayahuasca and the plants and the healers, I have been learning how to feel it thoroughly and honestly, and listen to that anxiety in my own body and listen to the anxiety in the narratives of the people that I work with and that I interview. Listen to that anxiety in the stories, and listen to the anxiety in the body of this planet. And I'm getting better at identifying for myself, naming the different sensations and emotions as they arise, and so I can also better help other people. So many years ago, a peyotero in northern Mexico said to me, for urban beings like, he was looking at me, like, for urban beings like you, the main value of these master plans is to alphabetize you of the interconnectedness of all nature. That's relational medicine. And likewise, to describe their experiences, many of the people that I interview, they often use and they often remember this feeling, thinking, imagery, this language, reconnecting the brain with the heart, reconnecting the rational mind with the sensitive body, knowing themselves to inter-exist, woven within this interdependent network that includes not only us humans, but also forests and rivers and plants and animals and mountains. This one message that I have received from the plants is that no individual can be fully healthy unless we are all healthy. The health of the individual is always in constant dialogue and relation with the health of the community, with the health of our societies, the health of our cultures, the health of our environments. Moving towards this relational understanding of health and well-being is essential for understanding the social and political dimensions of anxiety, of depression, of loneliness, a wide range of other diseases of civilization. I chose that short story by Galeano in the beginning because I can identify with it very much so. This is why I do what I do. This is why I do the research that I do, why I facilitate workshops. This is why I write. This is why I'm here in front of all of you, despite this almost paralyzing anxiety, to put all of my own pieces together and hopefully inspire and empower others to do the same and enact this collective healing. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.